What is up, family and friends? Man, it has been a while since I did one of these, but I could not let this year end without talking about the new Star Wars film. And hey, that's why I'm here after a long, indirect hiatus.
You might as well have the word hiatus printed on your tombstone.
You know what, Marv? I will accept that L. Anyhow, we're going to go ahead and dive into this review of Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. So, of course, we're going to go with the usual format of my movie reviews. We're going to talk about some good, some bad, brief spoiler talk. I don't want to try to extend this longer than I have to. So, very brief spoiler talk, but you will get a warning on the screen about yay high, and you guys won't have to look at me trying to cut my head off because you ain't seen it yet. So, you've been warned.
Pretty sure the movie's already been spoiled since you're almost a week behind.
Hey, I don't want to half-ass this review, so I had to let it sink in first. So, no more waiting. Let's get into this thing. First, the good. For a movie with a runtime of 2 hours and 22 minutes, I have to say that they did a really good job pacing this movie out throughout that runtime. I have to commend probably J.J. Abrams since he returned to direct the movie. So, hey, thanks for not making this movie feel like it was 2.5 hours.
The movie could have ran a little shorter for me. The story wasn't all that.
Well, thanks for transitioning to the next spot. So, yeah, the story of this film, I don't think it was bad. Obviously, we have to think about it from the confines of what they had to give us. And we all know the controversy of the last film and all that, but we're looking at the story as a whole from episode 7 to 8 to 9 and if it's cohesive or not. Now, I was on the side of the fence with people that did not hate The Last Jedi because regardless of what folks think that Rian Johnson did to the franchise and all that or whatever, I do think that there were some interesting things that they did in that film, and it did carry over into this one. While I feel that there were some things that were left out building the narrative for this film, I do think it was cohesive enough to where you could sit down, understand what's going on, and not gripe about it too much. That is, if you're not quote unquote a super fan.
Are we going back to blaming toxic fans again?
Look, I have already said my piece when it comes to a certain group of fans within the fandom when it comes to this stuff. But hey, from a certain perspective, as made famous by one Ben Kenobi, it all depends on how you look at it. It really all depends on how you look at it. So that's all I'll say. The characters in this movie, I had absolutely no problem with. I loved Daisy Ridley as Rey. I loved John Boyega as Finn. Loved Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, aka Ben Skywalker. I think everyone essentially brought their best performances for this film. And I really think that what they were given, how they executed it, I honestly feel it worked. I really liked what they brought to their characters in this movie. Surprisingly, I actually found Kylo Ren being the most compelling character in this last chapter. And honestly, as the movie progresses and you kind of see some building blocks here and there, it's kind of for good reason.
Ah, yes, the old compelling villain trope. This is becoming really tiresome if you ask me.
Well, to be fair, we saw both ends of the villain trope in this movie. We had, of course, the compelling villain and the I want to rule everything type of villain because Palpatine is back. And that's not a spoiler because he's been in the posters and all that or whatever. So, yes, there you go. I mean, we get both type of villains in this film. The movie had some really well executed action set pieces. They had some really cool chases, some really good lightsaber battles and uses of the Force and all of that. And of course, the space battles and the ships and all that. Of course, we're going to get all of that stuff. All that stuff for me, it was exciting. It was fun. The movie itself, that essentially is what makes the movie fun when you have all those things and it's well executed. For me personally, I felt it was well executed and done well.
Like it's really hard to do an action sequence.
Now, Marv, let's not act like all action sequences are created equal, okay? We're not gonna do that. So, in short, the things I liked, we had the pacing, loved the characters, thought the story was competent, and of course, the action set pieces. Hey, it all works for me, but wouldn't be quite a thorough review if we don't talk about the bad section. So, let's go ahead and talk about a few things that I didn't necessarily like.
This section should be pretty short.
Given that the production had to deal with the passing of one Miss Carrie Fisher, aka Princess Leia, aka General Organa, however you want to put it, it was one of those things where I feel like her death was really felt in this film, which I think was kind of to the film's detriment. It's not to say that that ruins the whole effect of the film, but when it comes to the Leia character, her presence feels missed because it really does seem like she had more of a pivotal role in this film, but because of real life events, they had to use what they could work with, and honestly, kind of hurts, really. One of the things that was a bit off-putting was there wasn't much of a background build up as to why, not necessarily why, but how Palpatine returned. It was more of an emphasis on why he returned, which wasn't that big of an issue, but at the same time, I really felt that was a missed opportunity as far as how they executed that. There's been a bit of time passed between The Last Jedi and this film, so they used the classic rolling marquee to kind of fill in the blanks, but at the same time, I think it loses its effect because we don't really get that initial reaction to the revelation that Palpatine is returned and trying to figure out why. I just feel that was something that really could have had more impact if we actually seen people's reactions to it on screen. What I will say is they don't completely just make it so that Palpatine is back. They actually subtly explain how he's still around. But at the same time, it does make me wonder whether or not Palpatine was even supposed to be in this film. So it's one of those kind of things that's kind of a sore spot, but it just, it's like at this point, you kind of have to take it as it is.
So I'm supposed to just like it because that's all they had to work with. Great explanation, FM.
Like or dislike is completely subjective, Marv. What I am saying is that given the circumstances with the production, with all things previously mentioned, it's one of those things you just have to take at face value. Either you take it or you leave it. That's all there is to it. So as far as bad things, that's all I have. So we're going to go into a little bit of spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can go to the time that's going to be right here, and you don't try to come in my DMs and try to bite my head off talking about it and warn you. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into some spoiler talk. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, I'm going to keep this section as brief as I possibly can and just go over some of the more finer points of the movie. Now, one of the things that I thought was cool and that they essentially tried to dive into as much as possible is the fact that Leia did, in fact, have Jedi training with Luke. I actually thought that part of it was cool, but what was sad about it is the fact that we couldn't explore that much of it because Carrie Fisher passed. So they can only use what they were able. They can only work with what they had. And that's kind of the heartbreaking thing about it. Another thing is they actually explore Rey's lineage. And again, it's one of those things that makes you wonder whether or not Palpatine was actually supposed to be in this final film or not, or J.J. Abrams had to just try to course correct a little bit to try to at least appease some fans or another, but it's one of those things that makes you think. The revelation is Rey was Palpatine's granddaughter.
So I'm guessing that's supposed to explain the ex machina for Rey since episode 7.
Well, Luke had the Ex Machina thing going for him in A New Hope. He learned how to use the Force in like 2 days. Like, come on now. What made the revelation interesting is now we're able to see that conflict inside of Rey as we've previously seen in Kylo Ren. Which also, of course, makes their destinies intertwine from Jump Street. So I think that aspect of it is what makes that revelation cool. Another revelation that would have been cool if they would have explored it a little bit further is the fact that they do confirm that Finn is Force sensitive. What essentially makes this a missed opportunity is because it's very brief, is about as brief as they did when they showed Leia being Force sensitive in The Force Awakens. It's just that brief when she felt Han die. That's the extent that we know of him being Force sensitive. And I hate that they didn't explore that a little bit more, especially with him being a main character. One of the things that did carry over from The Last Jedi was this Force connection between Kylo and Rey, which they utilized quite a bit in this film. Again, they had to play on this narrative that their destinies were intertwined because of things that were set in motion because of Palpatine. And it's one of those things that kind of leave you scratching your head because you're wondering like, well, how was that possible? Because we were made to believe this, that, and the third from The Last Jedi, but now it's still kind of a thing because of this whole thing with the lineage. But again, it explored those mysteries of the Force that we haven't really delved into before.
But I thought the whole point was the Force is only as good as the person that's wielding it.
I think on the surface level that's true, but I think at the end of the day what it all comes down to is the Force essentially trying to balance itself. And that's something that they essentially play on in this film. Of course, leading up to this, Kylo has a revelation of his own, and he is now back to being Ben Skywalker again. And it comes down to him and Rey facing off against Palpatine. And it's this scene that essentially illustrates that, hey, the Force has to balance itself out when something is going wrong. So Palpatine has essentially been siphoning off other Sith's abilities over time, which with the also use of dark science keeps him alive, but he's kind of decaying. But because there's this connection between Ben and Rey, he taps into that and becomes rejuvenated while also draining them. But it comes to that point where Rey has to tap into the light side of the Force by, I guess, essentially the only thing I could kind of describe it is that her kind of sort of hitting an avatar state in a way and sort of essentially tapping into the previous Jedi before her. So it's kind of like all the Sith versus all the Jedi in one final clash. And it's just that one, again, it's that thing where it feels like the Force is balancing itself out, and it comes down to this. And again, it's one of those things you kind of just take it and you leave it. This, of course, causes Rey to give up her life when she defeats Palpatine. And then, of course, Ben, who was previously knocked away, he comes back and essentially gives up his life to save hers. And it's kind of bittersweet because at the end of the day, the official bloodline of the Skywalkers is done. Like, there's no more of them. And the movie essentially ends with Rey going to Luke's home. She buries the lightsaber of Luke, and Leia actually had her own lightsaber, but she takes them and buries them. And she's asked what her name is, and it's at this point, after seeing Luke and Leia's Force ghosts, she then adopts the name Skywalker. So she says that her name is Rey Skywalker, which is cool, but at the same time, it's bittersweet because it's still the revelation that the Skywalker lineage technically is over. Like, that line is done. So, it's like, I didn't hate it, but like, it left me feeling a certain kind of way, though.
So it didn't quite end the way you thought it would.
I'd be lying if I said that it did, Marv. So, of course, in conclusion, is this movie flawless? Absolutely not. No movie is perfect by any means, but you have to express how you feel about the movie according to your subjectivity after trying to be as objective as possible. Is the movie worth seeing? Personally, I feel it is. I still think it's a fun movie. It has good characters in it. And if you just take the story for what it is, it's not a bad journey to be on. It really is not. So I really feel like, hey, as a holiday film, hey, Star Wars is kind of taking over the holiday scene as far as movie going is concerned. So I still say go see the movie. It's fun. You know, it still has all the things that a Star Wars fan would enjoy. At least I believe it. I believe it does. And that's where I'm at with it, to be perfectly honest. So guys, with all that being said, I give Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, my marvelous score of 7.5 out of 10. As I said, I still feel it's a fun movie to see. If you don't have too many hang-ups about the movie, I still say take your kids, enjoy it. You may enjoy it as well. I don't see a problem with the movie, but I know there's still a section of fans out there that are still upset that it doesn't follow this narrative or that narrative that they've gone on with and read every novel and comic book and all this or whatever. It's just like, look, it is what it is. Either you take it at face value or you don't. That's all you really do. So it's like, I'm not going to be arguing back and forth with people online about what's good Star Wars and what ain't. Like, I mean, hey, to be honest, the way folks are acting about the new series now, they were acting the same way almost 20 years ago when the prequel trilogy came out. So, like, folks flip-flop all the time.
FM, I don't think it's right for you to be assuming people's thought processes.
Look, it is what it is. You take it at face value. That's all I could say. It's like, that's all any of us can really do. But anyway, that's my score. That's how I feel about the movie. And there you go. So guys, that does it for my overdue review. And I hope you guys enjoy watching it. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say about the movie in the comments. You know I enjoy interacting with you. For those that follow me, you know what it is, okay? I very much appreciate it. Thank you, as always, for watching my content. So, of course, you guys know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff. That would help me out greatly. And, hey, I love interacting with you guys. It'll give me more motivation to do some more stuff, okay? Like, it's been quite a 2019 for me. I will tell you that. It sure has. So until next time, keep following my advice to go nerd, but nerd responsibly. This is your boy Fallen Marvel.
And I am the Sith Lord Marv. Come and join the dark side.
And family, we are out. Happy holidays to you and see you later. Deuces.